Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to break down the classic NCERT story, A Letter to God. We'll cover the plot, the themes, and all the key points you'll need to absolutely ace your exams. Ready? Let's get started.
So, here's the plan. First, we're going to walk through Lencho's story, from his big hopes to his crushing loss. Then, we'll look at the really surprising and ironic response his letter gets. And finally, we'll analyze the whole thing to get you totally prepped for your exams. Let's jump right in.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1. This is where we meet our main character and witness the dramatic storm that really sets the whole story in motion.
At its core, this is a pretty simple story about a farmer with just incredible, unshakable faith. But it asks a really deep question. What should we really put our faith in? And as we go, we're going to see these big ideas of kindness, human nature, and a whole lot of irony.
Now picture this. The whole story takes place in this single, lonely house in a valley. It's totally surrounded by nature. This isolation is super important because it really emphasizes how this farmer's entire life depends on the land and the weather.
So, let's meet our main character, Lencho. The book calls him an ox of a man, which is just a way of saying he's unbelievably hardworking. But the number one thing you have to know about him is his faith. It's simple, it's absolute, and it's totally unquestioning. That faith is what drives this entire story.
So when we first meet Lencho, he is just brimming with hope. He's looking out at his fields, and they are promising a fantastic harvest. The only thing he needs to make it all perfect is a good, solid rainstorm.
And you know what? When that rain finally starts to fall, Lencho is ecstatic. Now this quote is fantastic because it shows us exactly how he thinks. He doesn't just see rain, he sees money. Because for a farmer, every drop of rain means a better crop, which means more security for his family.
But just like that, all that joy just vanishes. The gentle, life-giving rain suddenly turns into a brutal, destructive hailstorm. That beautiful curtain of rain becomes a storm of very large hailstones, and Lencho's hope instantly turns to dread.
And the damage, it's just total. I mean, absolutely nothing is left. The corn is gone, the trees are bare, and the whole field looks like it's been covered in salt. In just 1 hour, everything Lencho worked for is destroyed, and he's just filled with sadness. Okay, but this is where things get really interesting, and the story takes a completely unexpected turn. Let's head into part 2 and see what happens after this disaster.
Now you'd think after losing absolutely everything he'd be crushed, right? Well, not Lencho. Even with nothing left, he clings to one single hope, his complete and total faith that God sees what happened and will help him. He really believes that no one dies of hunger.
So what does he do? Something you'd probably never think of. He actually decides to write a letter to God. He asks for 100 pesos so he can plant his crops again and feed his family. He just addresses the envelope to God and drops it in the mail like it's the most normal thing in the world.
Okay, so the letter gets to the post office, and you can just imagine the scene. The postman finds it and just starts laughing. I mean, he's never seen an address like that. He shows it to the postmaster, who also has a good laugh. But then he stops. He's genuinely touched by the incredible faith of the person who wrote it.
The postmaster, he just can't bear to see that kind of faith get crushed. So he comes up with this amazing plan. He's going to answer the letter himself. He gets money from his employees, chips in part of his own salary, and asks his friends to help, calling it an act of charity. He manages to collect 70 pesos.
So the next week, Lencho comes to the post office and gets the letter with the money inside, and his reaction? Nothing. Not even a hint of surprise. His faith was so strong, he completely expected God to answer him. To him, this wasn't some miracle. It was just what was supposed to happen.
But, and this is the part that makes the story so famous, he's not grateful. He's angry. Can you believe it? Angry. And why? Because when he counts the money, there are only 70 pesos, not the 100 he asked for. And in his simple worldview, God doesn't make mistakes.
So he marches right back to the post office and writes another letter. And in this letter, he tells God about the missing 30 pesos and says, "Don't send the rest through the mail, because the post office employees are a bunch of crooks and they must have stolen it." And that accusation right there is the heart of the story's irony. So for part 3, let's really break this down and get you ready for those exam questions.
This right here is what we call situational irony. It's when the exact opposite of what you expect to happen, happens. The very people who performed an act of kindness to help Lencho are the ones he accuses of being thieves. His faith in God is so absolute, it literally blinds him to the goodness of the humans right in front of his face.
So when we talk about the themes in this story, there are a few big ones to keep in mind. Obviously, we have faith and kindness, but there are also two major conflicts going on. First, it's humanity versus nature, which we see in that destructive hailstorm. And second, there's a conflict between humans themselves, shown in Lencho's tragic misunderstanding.
So what's the big lesson here? What's the story trying to tell us? Well, it seems to be saying that while faith is a beautiful thing, blind faith can stop us from seeing the good in other people. It's a reminder that simple human kindness is out there, and that we should be careful not to misjudge others.
All right, if an exam question asks you to describe Lencho, you're going to want to hit these 3 key points. 1, he is faithful, with a capital F. His belief is total. 2, he's innocent, almost naive, because he truly thinks he can just write letters to God. And 3, he's simple-minded, a hardworking guy who just doesn't understand the complexities of the world.
And last but not least, let's talk exams. If you want to score well, you've got to use these key words. Talk about Lencho's unwavering faith, the postmaster's active charity, and of course the situational irony of the ending. Don't forget to mention that classic line, bunch of crooks, and the 2 main conflicts. That really brings us to a final question to think about. Which do you think is more valuable, an unshakable faith in a higher ideal, or a simple faith in the goodness of the people around you?